Here's a crazy fact. About 71% of the planet's surface is covered in water, but all 100% of the people live on land. Now imagine what would happen if the land and water suddenly switched places, and the entire population of Earth instantly went extinct. That's exactly what happens to this family when the magnetic poles pull in Uno reverse, and now they'll have to survive at the bottom of the ocean against deadly creatures, and even other survivors. But don't worry, because we're here to break down the mistakes made, what you should do, and how to beat the magnetic apocalypse in Survive. This family is about to have the worst vacation of their lives. Somewhere deep in the Caribbean Sea, this family of 4 is out on a cruise to celebrate their son's 13th birthday. But it won't be long before this peaceful day turns deadly. Deciding to go for a swim, the mother Julia dives off the bow without letting anyone know, when all of a sudden it begins to feel like something is dragging her under. And no matter how hard she tries, she can't seem to make it back. Finally, the husband Tom hears her screaming and jumps into action, managing to save her life just in time. It's a close call, and afterwards, the dad uses it as a teachable moment, reminding them all just how dangerous the ocean can be. After exchanging gifts, they all gather around for a family photo, never suspecting that it's the last picture they're ever gonna take. By now, it's late at night, and Cassie steps outside to FaceTime with her crush, Adam, who's calling from back on dry land. Everything seems normal at first, but in the distance, she spots an unnatural-looking storm brewing in the sky. Then out of nowhere, the call abruptly cuts out. The girl quickly rushes inside to tell her family, but they've already noticed that something is not right. Turning on the spotlights, they realize that they're surrounded by a massive pod of humpback whales. And their father explains that it's normal for storms to affect their behaviors, but it gets dangerous when one of them comes so close that it hits the bottom of the boat. Alright, this family is already running into trouble and the apocalypse hasn't even started yet, but I guess that's why they shouldn't have named their yacht after the boat from Jaws. Now, it's bad enough that the mother almost drowned on her son's birthday, but it looks like the danger is not over yet. They don't know exactly what's going on here, but this area of the Caribbean is known for fast-moving storms that form with very little warning. That would line up with the massive storm that they saw on FaceTime and also explain why the call dropped out, due to bursts of atmospheric electricity interfering with the signal. As for the whales, they can actually sense the pressure change caused by large storms and instinctively move to safer coastal waters. So even though the sky above them looks clear right now, after noticing all of this strange activity, I'd be concerned about the possibility of a rogue storm taking us out. Now, as soon as Tom realized this, the first thing that he'd want to do is get everyone inside, put on their life jackets, and lock down the hatches and windows, stopping them from flooding or going overboard if they're hit by strong waves. Then he'd want to check their GPS and radar to see if any of his navigation systems still work, and set off as fast as possible back towards shore, heading away from the storm based on the wind and cloud patterns, and trying to contact help over the radio as they go. That would have been enough to save their lives in most situations, but there have already been signs that this is actually something much worse. Earlier, they didn't notice that their compass was spinning out of control, and that's always a sign of interference in the Earth's magnetic field. When Julia was pulled under, she thought that it was just a rip current, but extreme electromagnetic activity can also cause vertigo-like symptoms in sensitive individuals. But the biggest warning of all came from what they saw on FaceTime. It might have looked like a giant thunderstorm, but if you actually look closely, you can notice aurora-like colors glowing in the sky. These lights normally only appear in the South or North Pole, so to see them in Miami means something very unusual is going on. If they put it all together, the signs all show that there's been a major shift in Earth's magnetic field, but unfortunately, there won't be anything that they can do to stop it until it's already too late. Okay, listen, I'm not saying I want the oceanic apocalypse to happen, but if it did, the one thing in the world that I'd be happy to be rid of is evil data brokers. Quick question, you ever Google yourself? I do, all the time. And you know what I find every single time? Well, aside from an article that says, world's coolest YouTuber, it's often a lot of my personal information, like my email, my address, even my freaking phone number. It honestly makes my skin crawl. Ever wonder how those spam calls find you? This is why. You see, data brokers make billions of dollars selling your data without your okay. And while they're supposed to remove it, if you ask, they make it a nightmare. That's why I've been telling my friends and family about today's sponsor, Aura. Now, you all know I've been using Aura for some time now, and it's wild how much they find even after using them for so long. They truly rock. It's like having all-in-one digital security. You might have one layer of protection, but without Aura, it's like leaving the back door wide open. Now, they offer dark web alerts, real-time fraud monitoring, a secure VPN, antivirus, password manager, and if anything goes wrong, they've got 24/7 US-based support and even $5 million in identity theft insurance. Honestly, knowing these companies are profiting off of your info, it doesn't sit right with me, which is why I choose Aura. So if you're out there navigating the digital wasteland, I highly recommend checking this out. You can try Aura free for 14 days by going to aura.com/HTB. In those 2 weeks, you'll actually see where your data is being exposed and sold. And I'm just not leaving myself vulnerable to these digital scavengers. And you shouldn't either. Seriously, head over to aura.com/HTB and take control. Stay safe out there. The impact from the whale might have damaged their propellers, so it's up to Tom to dive in and take a look for himself. Nervous, the family watches as he disappears below the waves, but when he finally comes back to the surface, there's a nasty wound on his left shoulder. While Julia patches him up, he explains that he cut it on the propeller after getting startled by something big moving in the water. The boat's too badly damaged to keep going, leaving them stranded until help arrives, but what they haven't realized yet is that no one is coming to save them. Although it looks bad, they've got more than enough supplies to last for a few days, but that's when they hear a bizarre rumbling coming from somewhere outside. Looking up, they see an enormous fireball falling from the sky, and it hits the water just a short distance away. A moment later, another meteor strikes even closer, and Tom realizes that they need to get out of there, like now. Hitting the throttle, he gets them as far as he can before the engine literally tears itself apart, moving them out of the way just as a third object nearly impacts their boat. And looking closer, they realize that these aren't meteors after all, they're actually satellites. Just then, the wind shifts as their compass starts to spin out of control, and with no way to predict what's coming next, all they can do is batten down the hatches and hope for the best. Within seconds, they're hit by a powerful swell that knocks everyone to the floor, and Tom rushes outside for some life jackets, just in case the whole boat goes under. As he runs for the radio, their noses suddenly start to bleed, as a sharp ringing fills their ears, and the girl gets so nauseous that she starts to vomit uncontrollably, until finally the pressure gets so bad that they all black out, having no idea that when they wake up again, the world as they know it will be completely destroyed. The family wakes up many hours later to the sound of water pouring into the boat, but they're not sinking. A quick look around tells them that the hull was badly damaged, but when they step outside, they're in for the most shocking discovery of their lives. Instead of the Caribbean Sea, they're surrounded by nothing but dry land for miles around, as if their entire boat had been lifted up and dropped into the middle of a desert. I mean, there is absolutely no sign of any survivors for as far as the eye can see. Grabbing a map, Tom starts trying to get their bearings while his wife cleans up the boat, but what he finds is absolutely strange. It seems like the North and South Poles have somehow flipped sides, something that hasn't happened for almost 1 million years. As crazy as it sounds, the oceans must have drained out onto dry land, which is bad news for anybody who wasn't on a boat, and that's including his daughter's crush back in Miami. Alright, officially this might be the worst vacation ever. These four are unbelievably lucky just to be alive, but if they want to stay that way, then they need to start thinking about survival. If Tom is right, and the oceans drained onto land, then that means that every major coastal city was just buried under millions of tons of seawater. More than 40% of the world's population would have been killed instantly, which is just a long way of saying that help, yeah, it's never coming. It would be easy to get overwhelmed by the incomprehensible scale of the disaster, so all they can do now is stay focused on their tasks to keep themselves grounded in reality. No matter what the situation, survival experts always focus on the core four, which are shelter, water, fire, and food. Good news is that they still have plenty of supplies, and the boat provides them with an excellent form of shelter to use as their home base. They're gonna want it to be as weather-tight as possible, so while everyone's busy with their tasks, one person can be assigned to find materials skills to patch up breaches in the hull. Everyone else needs to take stock of their supplies, and as always, their most important resource is going to be clean drinking water. Before the crash, Tom mentioned that they had 26 gallons or 98.4 liters of drinkable water on board. Now, experts agree that 1 liter per day is the bare minimum for survival, so that gives us just under 25 days of water per person if they ration it properly, which actually isn't too bad, all things considered. With shelter, water, and fire covered, that leaves food as the last priority. Now, Tom mentioned that they should have enough for 4 days, but now that they're focused on survival, they should try to extend that for even longer. The average person needs about 2,000 calories per day to function normally, but you can easily get by on half that if necessary, turning 4 days worth of food into 8. I'd take stock of everything that they have and start by consuming products with the shortest shelf life first, setting aside calorie-dense foods like peanut butter and granola for later. They can even use Julia's medical skills to measure out everyone's exact rations for the day, allowing them to cut down on waste or overeating. If they use their supplies wisely, then they should be able to survive past the initial shock of the event, but soon they're about to realize that something even worse is still to come. Heartbroken, Cassie storms off to the cabin, and there's nothing that her mother can say to make her feel any better. There isn't much that they can do besides take stock of their supplies and start preparing for survival. But while his parents are busy, Ben, he gets an idea. Collecting a bunch of birthday balloons, he climbs up to the top of a nearby cliff and lets them go at the end of a long rope. But even though he hits his little dance to celebrate, the truth is that he's just made his biggest mistake. After tweaking with the radio for a while, Tom here is eventually able to get it working again, and he immediately starts calling out to anyone who might be listening. A serious-sounding voice finally responds. The man introduces himself as Now, the captain of a deep-sea research submarine that ended up stranded somewhere nearby. He confirms what the family was afraid of, explaining that a sudden reversal of the magnetic poles caused the ocean and land to flip. In fact, they're the first survivors that he's even heard of since the event took place, but somehow the news gets even worse. His calculations show that the poles are going to flip again in just a few days, and if they're going to survive, then they'll need to get to higher ground as soon as possible. So they quickly send the kids to start packing up their things. Once they're out of earshot, Tom asks the man if they might hitch a ride on his sub instead, but the answer isn't exactly what they wanted to hear. After all, the sub can only hold up to 3 passengers, so no matter how they slice it, there's still not enough room for everyone. But with his partner dead, he has 2 seats left for the kids. Desperate, Tom begs the man to take them aboard, but Captain finally agrees, reading off his exact coordinates from the map. Marking them down, he measures the distance between their locations, estimating that the journey should take between 2 and 3 days. They agree to stay in touch over the radio, and the man wishes them luck on their trip, but these two have no idea that they'll never speak to each other again. Since it's already getting late, they decide to spend one more night on the boat and head out first thing in the morning, but what they don't know is that their new friend isn't the only one out there. Okay, this changes everything. Before, it seemed like focusing on survival would be enough to keep them safe, but now they've learned that the entire planet is a ticking time clock and they have to make it out of the sub before time runs out. Getting there, it's not going to be easy because they'll have to cross about 30 miles of what used to be the ocean floor. With no shelter, food, or water anywhere to be found, it's basically going to be like hiking across the open desert, and the trip itself could easily turn deadly if they aren't careful. Now, when they're getting ready for a mission, real-life search and rescue teams always plan their routes in detail before moving. As their navigator, Tom should spend the night looking over the charts and maps, familiarizing himself with the route so they'll know exactly what to expect. When it comes to supplies, water is still the most important resource, and they're going to need about 1 liter per person per day. So for a 3-day journey, they need to take at least 12 liters, but trying to carry as much as possible in case of emergencies. For food, they'll need about 1,000 calories per day, and their focus should be on high-calorie, low-weight options like peanut butter, trail mix, and dried fruit. Now, besides dehydration, heat from direct sun exposure will be the next deadliest threat, so they'll need to bring their own shelter to protect them from the most intense hours of sunlight. This should be easy enough to set up using some canvas or some tarps. I mean, it doesn't have to be anything fancy, just enough to give them some shade. They'll also want to cover every inch of exposed skin with light-colored, loose-fitting clothing, and travel during low-light hours instead of the daytime. And I mean, that covers the basics, but one thing they haven't accounted for yet is the possibility possibility of encountering other survivors. Although it's extremely unlikely that they're going to find anyone at all, now here is living proof that they are out there, and the next ones might not be so friendly. So for their own safety, I'd try to stay out of sight whenever possible, and put together some homemade weapons before they leave the boat, using knives, fishing gear, maintenance tools, and whatever the hell else they have on hand. Even if everything goes well and they make it out of there alive, the captain mentioned that his sub can only fit 3 people, but that's under normal conditions. Since they're only using it as a floating bunker to ride out the next storm, it actually does have the oxygen supply and physical space to support a 4th person for a limited amount of time. So knowing this, it might actually be worth it to betray now once they've reached the sub. I mean, it's an absolutely dick move, but no one would ever have to know, and I'm sure the kids would be much happier with both parents still alive. At sunrise the next morning, they all wake up early and start gathering supplies, while Tom steps outside to check the weather. Off in the distance, he spots his son's balloons drifting in the wind, but then, stepping over the ridgeline, comes another man with a large black dog, and in his hands, it looks like he's carrying some kind of homemade spear. Locking eyes on the family, the man keeps walking towards them without saying a word. Tom foolishly climbs down to offer him some water, but it's the last mistake that he's ever gonna make. Although he tries to introduce himself, the stranger just keeps staring right past him, seeming fixated on his wife as she watches from the boat. When he finally speaks, it's in a language that they can't understand, but he nods gratefully when Tom offers him a sip from his canteen. It starts off friendly enough, but after guzzling as much water as he can, everything changes as the man suddenly pulls back and slams the metal container straight into Tom's face. Stunned, he struggles to get back on his feet as his wife rushes over to help, but the man plunges the spear straight into his chest, suddenly turning on the rest of the family. That makes 1 down with 8 more to go. Horrified, she takes off running back towards the boat, but he launches the spear as she tries to get away, nearly killing her as the blade slices deep into her shoulder. Luckily, it's just a flesh wound, and she's finally able to alert the kids as they lock themselves in the cabin. But they have only a matter of seconds before the stranger catches up. The woman motions for her kids to stay quiet as she hustles them into a hidden compartment beneath the seats, handing Cassie a loaded flare gun in case the man should find them. A moment later, he's already pounding on the glass, leaving her just enough time to grab a knife and take cover in the bathroom before he finally breaks through. Okay, I guess you probably should have seen that one coming. Yes, I know it's bad when the whole family has to watch their father get no-diffed by the first survivor that comes across them, but this guy basically just walked right into his own demise, so Tom, my boy, it looks like he just f***ed up. Now, as a marine biologist, you should have known damn well just how ruthless the game of survival could be. I'm sure you've heard of natural selection before, where the animals who adapt best to their environment are the ones who survive, right? Well, take a look around, man. This isn't Kansas anymore. You're in no position to help anyone, and if you've got enough supplies to share, then you've got enough to be worth killing. Times like these are when it's perfectly okay to start judging books by their covers. I mean, look at this guy. He made that spear to kill something, and that something could be you. The worst part, and this kills me, is that you left your entire family alone without so much as a warning, and now if they're lucky to even survive this, they'll have to live with the trauma of watching their father get harpooned in cold blood. Yeah, you might have been smart enough to get your PhD, but that didn't save you from getting clapped by a guy with a sharp stick. So sorry, Tom, but that's why you just up. Now, if Tom hadn't been such a dumbass, then he'd obviously have wanted to observe this guy from a safe distance and try to strike up some communication without leaving his defensive position. At least Julia here has some better survival skills, but getting out of this, it's not gonna be easy, guy. Hiding the kids was actually a great idea since the attacker still doesn't know that they exist yet, but he knows that Julia has nowhere to run, so it's only a matter of time before they have to fight. If it were me, I would quickly put on a life jacket, not because I'm afraid we're suddenly gonna sink, but because it provides a slight extra layer of defense over my vital organs. Her knife is a good weapon, but the downside is that it requires you to get in close, so I'd also consider using a fire extinguisher to spray and blind him, some metal pots and pans from the kitchen as shields or weapons, or even throwing blankets and towels over his head to distract him. If they make it difficult enough for him, then hopefully he'll just give up and go away, but if not, then he deserves whatever he gets for what he did to their dad. Still badly wounded, Julia grabs some medical tape to patch up her shoulder while the man staggers around upstairs, noticing a picture of the kids on the wall as he helps himself to a can of beans. Creeping deeper into the boat, he finally makes his way to the bathroom where the mother is hiding, but by the time that he gets there, she's already disappeared. Thinking quickly, she escapes through a hole in the wall and ends up back outside, quietly hiding just a few feet away until the man moves on. This gives her a chance to sneak around, but she doesn't make it far before she's attacked by his dog. Her only choice is to defend herself, but she manages to get away before the man can find her. And while he's distracted, she's able to sneak back inside through the front of the boat. For a moment, it looks like the coast is clear, but when she goes to check on the kids, he suddenly knocks her down and starts trying to drag her away. She puts up a good fight even though she's badly injured, but he stomps on her wrist as she reaches for the knife, ruthlessly beating her up while the others can't do anything but watch. At the last second, Cassie decides that she has to fight back, and throwing open the bench, she fires the flare gun straight into his chest, knocking the man back as the entire cabin goes up in flames. Telling the kids to run, Julia rushes into the fire to grab the map, knowing that they'll all be dead without it. The stranger tries to grab her leg, but she kicks him down and rushes outside, where she finds the kids huddled around their father's body. It's heartbreaking, but they barely even have a second to say goodbye before the killer emerges from the wreckage and starts chasing after them, forcing her to drag the boy away as the family runs for their lives. Setting a course for the submarine, Julia leads them through the mountains until they eventually lose the man somewhere up in the cliffs. They're finally able to stop for some water, but Ben here is still in complete shock over what happened, and it doesn't help that his sister thinks the whole thing was his fault. Seeing that he's hurt, their mother tries to comfort him, promising that she doesn't blame her son for what happened. But right now, their only choice is to keep going until they reach safety, and they quickly get back on the move while the killer is still hot on their trail. The path leads them through miles of dried up valleys that used to be the depths of the sea, and as they go, they come across the body of a hammerhead shark that suddenly found itself in the middle of a desert. Ben here, he wants to check it out, but only after stopping for just a moment, they see a freaky ass dude still coming at them like some kind of relentless zombie, forcing them to keep going before he can close the distance. Oh, they're on the brink of exhaustion for sure when they finally manage to lose him again, but after stopping for some more water, they're shocked to find that their canteen is almost empty. Realizing her mistake, Cassie admits that she must have forgotten to seal the cap. But this time, her mother is absolutely furious, knowing that without it, they're as pretty much as good as dead. The argument quickly turns into a shouting match, leaving them both too angry to speak, but with no time to waste, they have to keep going until they run out of daylight. Oh shit, this is not good. As if having their father's killer, Michael Myers, walking after them wasn't bad enough, now Cassie here might have just gotten them all killed with one stupid mistake. Her mother is right to be upset about the water. Yeah, okay, because we already know that you can't last more than 72 hours without it under ideal conditions. But hiking across the desert in direct sunlight is going to make the problem even worse. The submarine was supposed to be a 2 or 3 day hike away, but they've already run out of water before they've even made it to the first night, so chances are they'll be dead from dehydration long before the ocean comes back and kills them. Now, the good news is that they managed to grab some gear before they fled the boat, including their dad's lighter and a steel canteen, so you might think that they have everything they need to just boil water from the ground, right? Wrong. Since they were originally in the middle of the ocean, any water that they find in pools or puddles is going to be salt water, meaning that even if you boil it, the salt will just accelerate the dehydration and kill you even faster. Yay! This is why I'm surprised that they didn't secure more water before they left. Instead of waiting until the morning to pack, they should have had everything fully ready to go the night before. I mean, they managed to grab some bags, but somehow there was only one canteen out of everything they brought, and anything else that they packed is going to be completely useless to them now. If they were smart, they would have had at least 2 bags filled with nothing but water, and then they would have never ended up in this situation. Now, I hope they were all well hydrated before they left, because otherwise they're pretty much screwed. They could try digging a solar still or gathering condensation from the rocks the next morning, but they can't stop for more than a minute as long as this freaky ass dude is constantly trying to kill them. So they're gonna have to do something about him first. Now, we know that the man is already hurt, and that they're much faster than he is, so one option is to just keep walking and hope that he dies of dehydration first. But that could easily backfire if he ever catches up. Instead, it might be worth it to set up an ambush. After breaking the line of sight, I'd leave one of their supply bags in a narrow area in the rocks as a decoy, then circle around in a hook shape to loop back behind him, finding some high ground where they can watch his progress. From there, they can choose to either go in for the kill while he's distracted or let him keep walking and hope that he loses their trail, but sooner or later, it looks like confrontation, it might be inevitable. Reaching the edge of another valley, they spot the wreckage of a small plane in the distance and decide that it might be worth checking out. Besides a few birds and some layers of algae, it looks safe enough to use for a shelter, so they climb inside and get ready to spend the night. Once they're all settled in, Julia hands them each a chocolate bar and encourages the kids to get some rest. They're finally getting a chance to breathe after the most traumatizing day of their lives. And when she reaches into the pocket of her husband's shirt, she finds the last picture that they ever took as a family. Cassie asks about the night that they first met, and her mother tells the story to make them feel better, remembering how she was working at a hospital in France when Tom was brought in after a driving accident. The two of them quickly fell in love, and as soon as he was done with school, they decided to spend the rest of their lives together, but she never could have expected that it would all end up like this. Sometime late in the middle of the night, Cassie here wakes up needing to use the restroom. Not wanting to wake anyone else, she quietly opens the hatch and sneaks outside, but what she doesn't realize is that they're not alone. The moment that she lets her guard down, her father's killer emerges from behind the plane and begins sneaking up from behind. But just when it looks like she's done for, the girl's mother comes rushing over and stabs him straight in the back. Shocked, the man tries to turn around and defend himself, but she pounces on top of him, savagely stabbing him over and over again until Cassie finally makes her stop. That makes 2 down with 7 more to go. The next morning, they're immediately met with another horrifying sight. As they step out of the plane, they find that the man's body was dragged several feet and brutally ripped apart, as if something out there had been feasting on his corpse. Not only is it disgusting, it's a sign that now they're on the menu, but they'll all be dead either way if they don't reach the sub in time, so their only choice is to keep going until they find it. It's been several hours since their last sip of water, and while the girls are busy looking at the map, Ben here notices a puddle in the rocks and decides to have a drink for himself. He starts guzzling that shit down like Augustus Gloop at the chocolate factory before the others can finally stop him, but by then it's already too late, and now all they can do is hope that he doesn't get sick. Alright, this kid is an absolute idiot, and he's just made one of the worst mistakes that you could possibly make. For the son of a doctor and a scientist, it looks like their intelligence must have skipped a generation, because otherwise he would have known that guzzling up water from one of these puddles is essentially like digging your own grave. Now, we already know that these puddles contain potentially deadly levels of salt, but since this was once the bottom of the ocean floor, you can also clearly see that it was surrounded by dead marine life and rotting biological material, making it an absolute breeding ground for deadly bacteria like E. coli and Cryptosporidium. Best case scenario was that the water was mostly clean and Ben here won't have more than a stomach cramp, but the odds are much better that he's about to get dangerously sick. If the condition is mild, then after just a few hours, he's going to become nauseous, exhausted, and start losing water out of both ends, dramatically accelerating his dehydration. But if it's bad, then he'll suffer organ failure and probably end up dead in as little as 24 hours unless they're able to get him some kind of treatment. The worst part is, this didn't have to be a death sentence if his family had reacted more quickly. They were able to stop him just a few seconds after he took several gulps of the water, and as a doctor, his mother should have known that the right thing to do here was immediately make him vomit it back up. It takes your stomach a while to fully process the water that you've just consumed, so as long as he was able to cough it back up within the first 10 minutes or so, then he'd be clearing out his system of any bacteria, parasites, or toxins that he hasn't absorbed yet. Now, as if that wasn't bad enough, what happened to the stalker's body shows that there's some kind of unknown predator out there with them, which makes their situation even more terrifying. They may not know what it is, but they do know that it seems to attack at night, so the next time that they set up camp, they should use their father's lighter to start a fire. Now that they've taken care of the stalker, they no longer have to worry about human threats, and fire is one of the best natural deterrents for any other predator that exists. So it should be able to keep them safe from what's out there until they're able to reach the sub. The journey only gets more brutal as the miles stretch on, and they don't make it far before the kid's mistakes start catching up with him. He's already so nauseous that he can't stand up on his own, and with the heat of the sun beating down on their heads, it looks like he isn't going to make it much longer. After reaching the top of another ridge, they spot a large dump site of multicolored plastic chairs spread out across the hillside, and realizing that the boy cannot go any farther, their mother comes up with a brilliant idea. Working together, they quickly gather all of the chairs into a pile and start stacking them up on top of each other, creating a makeshift shelter to protect him from the sun. Once they're inside, Julia gives him a shot shot of medicine from the first aid kit to help fight off the illness, and it looks like they're safe for now, but nothing could ever prepare them for what's about to happen next. Exhausted, the family drifts off to sleep until a few hours later when Julia wakes up to a strange rustling sound somewhere in the distance. Curious, she climbs to the top of the ridge to have a look, but the moment that she discovers what's causing it, she immediately sprints back to the shelter, telling the kids that they need to run for their lives. Jumping to their feet, the three of them take off just as a massive horde of giant crabs reaches their hiding place. They've got a good head start, but the crabs are much faster in the sand, and it's only a matter of time before they catch up. The top of the next hill brings an overturned cargo ship into view, and noticing that some of the workers are still alive, the family decides to run to them for some help. But when the workers see what's after them, they immediately say, "Fuck that," and seal themselves inside one of the containers, locking the door before the family can get there. With the crustaceans closing in, their only choice is to climb on top of the container instead, but it turns out to be a good thing that they didn't make it inside. The workers might think that they're safe, but the crabs end up finding their way through a small opening in the wall and start violently tearing them apart as they're left with nowhere to run. Julia takes a cut to the ankle as she climbs up behind the kids, but makes it to safety just in time. Meanwhile, down below, the workers open fire with their weapons, desperately trying to hold them off, but in the end, there's nothing that they can do. One of them tries to escape through a hole in the ceiling, but he's dragged back down and eaten alive before their very eyes. Checking her leg, Julia finds that her injury is still bleeding, and with her energy starting to fade, she quickly wraps a cloth around the wound before suddenly passing out from sheer exhaustion. That makes 5 down with 4 more to go. Sometime later when Julia wakes up, she's worried to see that the kids have suddenly disappeared. Yelling out for them, she climbs down and arms herself with a shotgun from a dead worker, but the wind keeps getting stronger and stronger, and there's still no sign of them anywhere that she looks. Finally, Cassie comes running back from the dust cloud, explaining that they went to look for help, but it seems like nobody else was left alive. Alright, I guess this is what happens when the seafood strikes back. By now, they're just a quick day's hike from the man's sub, but with the wind picking up, it looks like the polar shift could happen again at any minute, so there's no time to waste. Getting there would be relatively simple if it wasn't for the roaming horde of flesh-hungry crabs, but what's strange is that these creatures shouldn't even be a problem. If these crabs are truly from the abyss, then their natural environment was incredibly different from what they're experiencing now. At the bottom of the sea, they were living under up to 1,100 atmospheres of pressure, with near freezing temperatures and extremely low levels of oxygen. When these types of deep-sea species are brought to the surface, the gases inside their bodies rapidly expand, and in many cases, they literally liquefy, so in reality, every single one of these crabs should have been turned into a smelly pile of goo the moment the disaster first happened. Yeah, that's some big brain energy for you right there. Peep that. Before leaving the cargo ship, I'd scavenge the wreckage for weapons and ammo to supply everyone in the family. You know, firearms are great, but they'll want something like a hatchet or crowbar too, just in case things get up close and personal. Now, just like we mentioned before, one of the most important weapons that they can use is going to be fire. Not only is it deadly, but it can create a physical barrier, giving them time to escape if the crabs attack. After adapting to life in the deep sea, the creatures are most likely completely blind, which means that they hunt based on ground vibrations and chemical signals. Knowing this, if they encounter the horde again, then they need to stop dead in their tracks and make as little noise as possible, hoping that they won't notice. Otherwise, as disgusting as it sounds, they should carry some chunks of flesh from the dead workers, allowing them to throw the pieces away as they run, and using them as a literal meat shield to distract the crabs. The mother's leg still needs attention before they go anywhere, but Julia here knows exactly what to do. After regrouping with the kids in a nearby container, she empties out one of the shotgun shells and pours the gunpowder over the cut, using a lighter to painfully cauterize the wound. After stopping for a well-deserved water break, the family goes around gathering up supplies, including a radio, which Julia uses to check in with the captain of the sub. It sounds like the man is in a hurry, but she lost the map during the attack, leaving her unsure which direction that they need to go. The captain says that he encountered the creatures too, explaining that they're a species of deep-sea crab, and now that their natural food source is gone, they've started eating anything that they can find. As if things weren't bad enough already, the ocean is coming back even faster than he first thought, leaving them with just a few hours to reach him before they're back underwater. Taking out a flare gun, he tells them to look for his signal as he flares it up into the air, and after a moment they see it appear in the sky a few miles away, setting off to try and reach his location as fast as they can. Oh, it's still a long way before they finally spot the sub in the middle of a big empty valley, but to get there they'll have to cross a massive ravine with sheer cliffs on either side. They're able to make it to the bottom without much trouble, but as they're looking for a way back up is when disaster strikes. All of a sudden, rocks start falling from the cliffs above as the walls of the ravine begin to shake, when Julia shoves the others forward just in time to save them from the falling boulders. When it finally stops, the mother realizes that it would be too difficult for her mother to climb over, but knowing that her kids can still make it, she shouts for Cassie and her brother to keep going on without her. Devastated, the girl pleads with her mother to keep trying, but Julia won't listen no matter how hard she begs, leaving her with no choice but to take her brother and head for the sub. Oh, it's a long climb back up, but after making it all the way to the top of the hill, they finally reach the end of their journey. Searching for the captain, they find him hiding in the shade behind the boat, but to their surprise, he's been badly injured, and it doesn't look like he's going to survive. This means that there's room for their mother after all, and realizing that there's still time, Cassie decides that she's going back to save her before it's too late. Meanwhile, back in the ravine, Julia is still burning through the last of her ammo as she takes out waves of crabs with her shotgun. But it won't be much longer before she's completely overrun. Just as she finally runs out, her daughter appears at the top of the pile and shouts that there's room in the sub, helping her climb over with only seconds to spare. All that's left is a short run to the sub, but now the army of crustaceans is right behind them. Reaching out just in time, they see that the captain is already dead, and the crabs drag him away to feed on his body, making 6 down with 3 more to go. While they're distracted, Julia and the kids manage to get inside and seal the hatch, closing it just as the horde of crabs surrounds the vessel. There would be no way of getting out without being eaten alive, but looking out the window, that's when they see an enormous wall of water headed straight for them, as the poles flip for the second time. Oh, there's nothing that they can do but brace for impact as they're hit with the full force of the wave, and although they're all safely buckled into their seats, the inverted pressure from the shifting poles causes everyone to fall unconscious just like before. Fortunately, they all wake up when it's finally over, but now it's time to see where they ended up. And climbing through the hatch, they realize that they're back in the destroyed city of Miami, relieved that they made it back to dry land, but heartbroken to see that the world they knew is gone forever. That makes about 8.062 billion down with 3 survivors, but I guess depending on how you look at it, maybe 13 was Ben's lucky birthday after all. You know, post-apocalyptic movies are gonna post-apocalyptic movie, and Survive definitely delivered on the post-apocalyptic vibes. That's arguably my favorite genre, when the world goes to and you just have to scrape up whatever you can off the floor and eat it in order to survive. I'm actually, you know, for the most part, I think the family did okay, but you gotta let me know down in the comments below if you would have done anything differently. Thank you so much for watching. Leave a like and subscribe, and check out that How to Beat playlist for more videos just like this one. I'm the guy. We will see you in the next video, and have a damn good day.